The draft, the stadium lights, pierced the September twilight like surgical instruments, casting harsh shadows across the sea of jerseys that rippled in waves of team colors. Marcus felt the familiar electric tension crackling through the air as thousands of voices merged into a singular roar of anticipation. The NFL's season opener had arrived, and with it, the intoxicating blend of hope and dread that marked every sports season beginning. He clutched his phone, the fantasy football app glowing with the roster he meticulously crafted over weeks of analysis. Each player represented more than statistics. Now they were vessels carrying his deepest obsessions, his need to control outcomes in a world that had grown increasingly unpredictable. The game day ritual had consumed him entirely, transforming what once brought joy into something darker, more desperate. Around him, the crowd swayed with an almost hypnotic rhythm, their painted faces reflecting the stadium's harsh illumination like masks in some ancient ceremony. Marcus noticed how their eyes seemed to hold the same hollow intensity he'd seen in his own reflection lately. The look of people who had invested too much of themselves in something beyond their control. The pre-game festivities unfolded with mechanical precision. Cheerleaders moved in synchronized formations that seemed less like celebration and more like incantations. The marching band's brass instruments caught the light, winking like warning signals as they played fight songs that echoed with an almost religious fervor. Even the college football highlights playing on the massive screens carried an ominous weight, each tackle and touchdown replay looping endlessly, hypnotically. Marcus's fantasy team stared back at him from his phone screen. The player headshots arranged in formation like pieces on a board game, designed by someone with intimate knowledge of human weakness. He'd spent countless hours analyzing matchups, studying injury reports, calculating projections that promised control over chaos. But tonight, something felt different. The numbers seemed to shift when he wasn't looking directly at them, and the player photos appeared to watch him with expressions that grew more knowing, more accusatory. The crowd's energy intensified as kickoff approached, but beneath the surface excitement, Marcus detected something else, a current of desperation that ran deeper than typical fan enthusiasm. These weren't just spectators. They were supplicants gathered for a ritual that demanded sacrifice. The sports season had become their religion, and they were here to offer themselves to its unpredictable gods. As the teams took the field, Marcus felt his pulse synchronize with the stadium's collective heartbeat. His fantasy lineup was locked in, but the familiar satisfaction of preparation had been replaced by a gnawing anxiety. The players below looked smaller than they should, more fragile, as if the weight of millions of expectations might crush them at any moment. Their movements seemed choreographed by an unseen director who understood that entertainment and suffering were often indistinguishable. The opening play unfolded in slow motion. Marcus watched his starting quarterback drop back, and for a moment, the player's eyes seemed to find his in the crowd, possible from this distance, yet undeniably real. The quarterback's expression held a mixture of resignation and accusation, as if he knew exactly what Marcus had wagered on his performance. What pieces of his soul had been traded for the illusion of control? The ball spiraled through the air, and Marcus felt reality begin to fracture. The stadium around him started to dissolve at the edges, the crowd's roar becoming something more primal, more hungry. His phone screen showed his fantasy team, but the players were no longer frozen in their headshots. They were moving, turning to face him with eyes that held the accumulated weight of every bet placed, every hope pinned to their performance. The realization struck him with the force of a blindside hit. He wasn't watching the game anymore. He had become part of it, another piece on the board, another soul fed into the machine that transformed human dreams into entertainment. The fantasy football world had bled into reality, or perhaps reality had always been the fantasy, and he was just now seeing the truth. As the crowd erupted around him, their faces transforming into something inhuman in their ecstasy, Marcus understood that the game day ritual wasn't about football at all. It was about feeding something ancient and insatiable that had learned to disguise itself as sport, something that grew stronger with each season, each desperate hope, each soul willingly offered to the altar of controlled chaos. The lights above began to pulse like a heartbeat, and Marcus realized he could never leave.